Hello, thank you for joining us for Chapter 2 of Profusion's Thoughts on 2017. In the last chapter, delivered last week, we largely looked back at the marketing success stories of 2016, including mobile messaging and video, and we'll certainly have more to say on each of those, particularly in Chapter 4 on key marketing technologies. But the key sort of mission statement or appeal for 2017 was really around the reintegration of marketing, focusing on that well-known expression that today we need to be working in marketing in a digital age rather than digital marketing per se. And secondly, we address the need for new data architectures that are fit for purpose with the mantra of good enough is no longer good enough. Today we'll be moving forward 10 key marketing themes in time-honoured fashion, and in the coming weeks we will be addressing the consumer context, key marketing technologies, the reintegration of marketing, and then looking at great expectations, the consumer mindsets in 2017. So, without further ado, as I say, we have 10 broad marketing themes for you during this chapter. And number one is not the most glamorous, I'll accept, but this is about data security and privacy, and specifically the requirements of the new EU GDPR due to take effect in the UK and across Europe in May 2018. Can appreciate there might be some confusion really out there, or maybe it's fallen off the radar given the fairly seismic events around the Brexit referendum in June of last year, but I think it's reasonable to suggest we should all be working towards the full implementation of the General Data Protection Regulation in May 2018, and you'll see on your slide on the left-hand side the key rights that need to be included in your approach to data, your data architecture, and your response to customers and clients. So each person has the right to be informed as to the data that's held on them, the right to access that data, the right to rectification, which is an interesting sounding word, but to correction, the right to erasure, the right to restrict processing, data portability, the right to log their objections, and rights in relation to automated decision-making and profiling. The last of which is really interesting as we sort of move forward with artificial intelligence and automated consumer decision-making, particularly around financial services, etc. So watch this space, but a key priority, I think, for all businesses is to be fit for the implementation of the GDPR in May 2018. Number two, similarly unglamorous, but advertising fraud and viewability. You'll be familiar there with the subheading that I know that at least one half of my advertising is wasted. I'm just not sure which half. Well, these days the conversation has moved forward, and particularly last year really seemed to generate a real head of steam. And I think this slide and this single sort of fact from Kraft, whereby they argue that they simply don't trust 75 to 85% of the impressions that they receive and so reject them. They don't have the confidence in the people behind the impressions that are being sold to them, if you like. And that's reflected, even Google admit that perhaps as many as 60% of the impressions traded across their network may be fraudulent. And if neither of those statistics really grab your attention, then how about the fact that the World Federation of Advertising estimates that advertisers may be wasting as much as $50 billion a year by 2025 if this issue isn't addressed. And we can see how important it is, and indeed the potential that it has to really undermine confidence in digital advertising. So a key issue to be addressed. Number three, another ongoing theme is the absolute need for speed in all aspects of business operations, and we'll of course return to this in the final chapter on great expectations. We know that speed has been really important in recent years as the digital economy builds up speed, but did you know that the maximum sort of tolerance, if you like, for site loading pages is between 2 and 3 seconds, with around half of respondents claiming they would abandon the site, and not only that, never return, and not only that, tell their friends about the inadequacies of the site. So the need for speed in terms of e-commerce, absolutely critical, and that's reflected in the range of delivery options being rolled out by different vendors. You'll also be aware of Google's accelerated mobile pages, some encouraging sort of results from the early days of their deployment. Mobile payments and contactless cards, of course, speak to this need. And I was reading the other day of an interesting need case, shall we say, about the frustrations of queuing to get cash from an ATM, and how Barclays are integrating their mobile app to enable you to place your order effectively whilst queuing for the cash machine and save milliseconds in the process. Number four picks up on very much a sort of ongoing theme around the personalization of communications, and again speaks to consumer expectations. The personalization offers the standout from the competition and new possibilities around it. Obviously for some people personalization might be simply naming the respondent in the communications, but mobile offers huge new potential in terms of context-specific communications. We'll talk later about the importance of cross-channel sort of communications and the seamless transition across channels. And obviously a huge amount should be predicated on individuals' purchase history and behaviours. And the prize really for people who can deliver that personalisation at scale consistently and generating the sort of trust and confidence of their audience is that they will have permission then to move forward with targeted recommendations for their customers and prospects. Number 5, in-the-moment marketing really takes advantage of both the speed and the growth of personalisation, and in many ways reflects mobile coming of age in terms of leveraging where people are at the time they're receiving their communications, what the surrounding circumstances might be, from the weather to any number of other attributes, and in many ways speaks to the emergence of the Internet of Things and the enhanced role of sensors that are fundamental to the growth of the Internet of Things. Number 6 speaks to the emergence of virtual reality. I feel like we've been talking about virtual reality for a number of years, but really coming to the fore in 2016. Providers including Oculus, HTC, Samsung, Google's new offering in this space, the Daydream, and Apple rumoured to be building and launching a mixed reality platform in 2017. You can see from the quotes the highly regarded Benedict Evans talking about dividing the world into people who think VR is the future and those who haven't tried it yet. It's also worth mentioning as an aside, as we saw in the first chapter with the success of Pokemon Go, that perhaps augmented reality being slightly overlooked at the moment and has huge potential to deliver new experiences for people in 2017, to reach a wider audiences given the low entry points and costs, perhaps to warm people up, if you like, for the full explosion of virtual reality. Number 7 integrates digital out of home into our considerations. As the Pokemon Go success story of 2016 highlighted, there's real potential for the integration of mobile and out-of-home sort of behaviours. And digital out-of-home has perhaps been a quiet star of advertising in recent years, with huge growth in the share of not only outdoor revenues per se, but outdoor share of the overall sort of media mix. So really exciting potential, lots of experimentation been done from advertisers ranging from Google here at Old Street to any number of film distributors, and real opportunities to create augmented reality or virtual reality experiences in the street, in your town, and to leverage mobile and mobile apps in particular. Number 8, you could hardly not have noticed A, the US presidential election, and B, the response to it in terms of the role of so-called fake news. And I think that speaks to the questions for the role of social networks and social media across all human sort of activities today. We'll see a lot more discussion of the importance of addressing the news agenda, addressing the fake news agenda, whether the likes of Facebook really do need to consider themselves as media companies. It's interesting to see a number of hires taking place. Facebook themselves have hired a former CNN anchor to manage their sort of news provision. So on that side, we'll see a great deal of conversation and progress, we hope. But also on the advertising side, it's quite interesting. Advertising, of course, follows individual sort of human behaviours, and we can see a shift away from the very public sharing of news and information across the major global networks, and a greater emphasis on private communications through messaging apps, etc. So a really interesting year ahead for social in so many respects. Number 9 speaks to a huge sort of commercial shift. Everything as a service. So you'll be, of course, very familiar with software as a service, perhaps slightly less familiar with data science as a service. Robotics is being talked about as a service now. But last year, perhaps the poster boy was shaving as a service, with Unilever's summer 2016 acquisition of the Dollar Shave Club, speaking to the importance of direct consumer models for major manufacturers and FMCG goods producers around the globe. So that literally means sort of bypassing the supermarkets and setting up a direct sort of delivery and a direct relationship with consumers. So a really interesting opportunity for brands, a massive challenge for the existing sort of retail model. It'll be very interesting to see how that succeeds going forward. Number 10, and finally, is sort of the heart of today's challenge and speaks to our sort of vision for 2017 of a reintegration of marketing. And in order to achieve that, the crucial importance of building effective bridges between the offline, typically the sort of point of sale retail store environment, and online behaviours. Absolutely key to effective sort of attribution and true sort of consumer insight. And there you have Chapter 2 of our look ahead at 2017 key marketing trends. As I say, we've kept that to 10 broad areas, all of which are worthy of discussion and presentation themselves. Thanks very much.